You see, whenever I speak in public, which is often, I always have a goal. So my goal is not necessarily to share the details. My goal, though, is to inspire each of you. Inspire each of you to start talking about domestic violence. The good thing is that I don't have to convince you that there is a problem, because all the proof that we need as a community here in the Bucks County area is that we are here to read a list of names of women who didn't have the support that they needed. See, the problem as I see it as a survivor of domestic violence is that we don't talk about it enough. We don't know what it looks like. So I want to inspire you tonight to get educated, to perhaps talk to a survivor, and then protect her with everything that we've got as a community. That's what it's going to take to make sure that we don't have a list of names to read anymore. The problem is that as a society, we don't really like to talk to people about their problems. I was raised in a world of don't intrude, it's none of your business, or we don't want to get involved with someone else's life. We also have a society that believes that domestic violence is only broken bones and bruises. And the problem is that the layers of abuse that people live with, that women specifically live with, are a very well hidden secret. In fact, they're such a secret that when I was living in a marriage of domestic violence, I had no idea that I was being abused. That sounds crazy, right? It wasn't until I connected with a woman's place, my buddies here, that I learned that I was actually living in a marriage of significant sadistic domestic violence. So here's what happened. I had left. I was out, and stalking and harassment had begun. It's called post-separation abuse. I didn't know this existed either. And our family was being constantly stalked and harassed. I was shocked. I was also scared to death. And I called at the suggestion of a friend, I called the woman's place, seeking help to get a restraining order. We've gone back and forth about my experience calling in that first day. I was hysterically crying and sobbing. I was scared to death. And through that, somehow I was able to convey to the volunteer on the phone that I needed help. But I only thought at that point that I needed legal help. And she said to me critical words that literally changed my life. She said, we're going to get you the help that you need. We're going to get you the team that can help you file that restraining order. Would you like to talk to someone? And I replied back to her, I don't need to talk to a therapist at a domestic violence shelter. I wasn't hit. At that point, I thought that domestic violence was all about broken bones and bruises. I don't remember the rest of the conversation. Somehow she had the insight to get me and to convince me that I did need to talk to somebody. And as a result of that conversation with her, I qualified and completed the following with a woman's place: 8 weeks of crisis counseling. Chelsea and I did 15 weeks of trauma therapy that I resisted because I didn't experience any trauma. I wasn't hit. I may get Chelsea in trouble here, so you cannot. We then we probably did more than 15 sessions. I think you get 15. We also then did 10 sessions of what's called EMDR. I did Braving and Becoming You with Rochelle educational programs at a woman's place, and I logged into countless support groups every week on the phone with more volunteers and other women who were going through exactly what I had gone through. It was a camaraderie like I had never experienced. This is me, Jen, a PhD in educational psychology and statistics. I own a business. I'm a college professor. As my friends from my former life heard my story, one of them commented last night to me, oh my gosh, if this happened to you, who else is this happening to out there? See, we think that domestic violence just exists on the TV show Made, in the double wides, when the truth is that it exists in the hills of Buckingham and the McMansions, right down to those trailer parks that we see on TV, the stereotypical ones. The problem that we have, though, is that we're not willing to talk about it, most of the time because we don't know what it looks like. So I'm encouraging you, find out what it looks like, and don't worry, I am going to tell you what it looks like. and how to identify it, ways to talk to a victim, and then ways to support her. Now, what I learned when I went through my healing journey is that domestic violence cuts through all educational levels, all socioeconomic levels. It is literally everywhere. Now, the problem, though, like I've said a couple times already, is that we think it's all about broken bones and bruises. So we are ready and we are always looking for it. The truth is that we hear domestic violence far more than we see it. We see and hear victims being abused in public. You may see a woman being berated by her husband in Giant for not picking out the right apple out of the apple bin. You may see her being berated at a party for wearing the wrong outfit. You may be out to dinner with a couple and he is insulting her. He is telling a story to purposely embarrass her. This is all abuse, but we don't really talk about it. The truth is also, as my friends who are here will tell you, you hear the stories of domestic violence from the victims themselves. They are telling you that they are being abused. And here is what that sounds like. You have a colleague who comes into work late, and she is crying because he has been screaming at her. She has no idea what the fight was about. She has no idea why she's in trouble. She doesn't know what he was yelling about, but she knows that it's all her fault. And she thinks that she can do better next time. You'll hear women you'll hear women tell you stories about how they pay all the bills in the house. Or worse, they don't have access to money that they earn. This is called financial abuse. Chelsea taught me all about this as well. We did a lot of work together. So money is withheld, or in my situation, I was chastised every time I spent a nickel. You'll hear women talk about control in their home. He's the only one that was allowed to use a cell phone in our house. And you'll hear about isolation. I wasn't allowed to spend the holidays with my people, who are also here. So you'll hear the stories, but this is what I really want to hammer home, because this is what you'll really hear. It's something called trauma bonds. And when I heard about these, again from Chelsea, I was really stunned in what I had been living through. An abusive relationship starts at this beautiful stage called love bombing. It's actually pretty crazy. Oh, I'm getting some head nods, this is good. So it's love bombing. This is when you fall madly in love with your abuser. He is whisking you off on vacations. Your French martini is waiting for you when you arrive on a Friday night. He is doing everything in his power to wrap you inside of him, and it's great. From your abuser, from your victim, you will hear that she has found the perfect man, and that he tells me all of his exes are crazy. We could have given the speech together, right? You're completing my thoughts. So all of his exes are crazy, and I'm not crazy, therefore this is going to be perfect. At the love bombing stage, he becomes her Prince Charming and her James Bond all wrapped up into one. Slowly but surely, the comments start. He may make fun of her children. He may criticize her because she doesn't have enough money. Maybe her business isn't as big as it should be. And she's like, well, wait, I think he's picking on me. I'm really not sure. And then the next thing you know, they fall off this cliff and the abuse really starts. This is when you'll hear from her, I'm dyeing my hair color because he wants me to be blonde. I'm growing my hair out because he wants it to be long. He's screaming at me all the time. I don't know why, but it's always my fault. And what she's done is she's put herself on this little hamster wheel. And she's running as fast as she can to make her abuser happy. At this point, she's bonded. She wants those love bombing moments back, and she can't get them, and they're become really few and far between. And what she's living in is abuse. So that's what they sound like. That's what those moments of abuse sound like that we don't talk about that much. So now that you know what it sounds like, what are we going to do with the information? Because now you hear it, and you've got to say something. Two issues. You don't want to wreck the relationship with the victim because she needs you. And the other issue is you don't want her running to the abuser because he will further isolate her from you. And she needs you because you are a lifeline of positivity and of unconditional love that she knows that she can rely on. So you can, like Marian said, drop an email if it's a safe email to her. You can even say to someone you think is a victim, hey, I just heard this woman speak about her experience with domestic violence, and do you know what she actually thinks it is? Drip it in any way that you can. Now this is really hard, and I know personally how hard it is and the strength that you need. So I'm going to tell you about the two people, and I'm probably going to cry. The two people that managed to get me out of domestic violence, who came, and I can't look at her. The two people who came to me. It was actually my two teenage daughters. They came to me and they said, we're scared to death of him, and we know that you were being abused. And they had done their homework. They had a laundry list of ways that they had seen their mother being abused, and they had had enough. And so we left. It's not always that easy. They kind of hit me over the head with it. If you know my middle daughter, you're really not going to be surprised that this is the way that they handled it. But there's an easier way. There's easier ways to do it as well. And the staff at A Woman's Place is there for you as you do this. The hotline is available. I know my friend is being abused. Help me figure out the way to do it. I then had to draw on Stephanie and Vicky's strength a year later and help another victim out, my oldest daughter. I was flying to Florida for her birthday, and I was going to be spending the weekend with her boyfriend, who I had met and didn't particularly like. If you're a parent of a girl, you know this story, right? All too well. The minute I got in the car, he started making sure that I knew everything that she was doing wrong. I was actually scared to death. He was picking on her ferociously, and I was kind of like, dude, enough. Her mom's in the car. I think she's kind of cool. It continued all weekend, and I didn't know what to do. And I called on Stephanie's strength. I said, I've got to do something before I leave. She's isolated down here. He's from Florida. He has a big family. They all think he's a prince. I did not think he was a prince. And all I did was say this. This is all that it took. On the way to the airport, as she drove me to the airport, thank God he wasn't in the car, I said to her, Allie, he picks on you a lot. He's pretty mean, and he shouldn't do that. I got in the car, I got out of the car, gave her a big hug, and hoped that I had said enough to not isolate her further from me, but also to make a difference. 2 weeks later, she called me. Her male dog, Dexter, was now the man of the house. She had broken up with the boyfriend and kicked him out. And she said to me magic words, Mom, I really heard you. That's all that it took. So sometimes it doesn't actually take all that much. So now we know what it looks like, and we know that if we can't find the words, we can call A Woman's Place, or we can think about the strength that I just told you about in my stories. Now she's out. And now we have to protect her with everything that she's got. We've got to love this victim as she is trying to leave an abuser and survive. This may be our biggest task to date. We know the following about leaving a domestic violence abuser. Number one, it takes about 7 times. Right? Okay. It takes about 7 times for a victim to leave. Number 2, the most dangerous time when they're going to wind up on that list is in the first 6 months. If guns are involved, she has a 50% greater chance of being killed. The feeling of fear of an abuser, of a victim, is the greatest indication of future abuse. I had all of them. He had access to a gun. I was less than 6 months out, and he was scaring me to death. And a judge in the Bucks County courthouse looked at me and said, well, he's just doing all this because you left him. And I was like, right. And what do you even say to that, right? So make sure that your victim has the support, because she's going to need it. What happened next was, he was pretty much allowed to do whatever he wanted to do, because we weren't stopping him. We don't have the laws here to actually stop abusers. They want to knock on your door at 6:30 in the morning and wake up your entire family, they can do that. They want to send you endless letters, they can do that. If they want to instant message you, text message you, leave you 100 emails a day, they can do that. what we teach them is that the rights of the abusers are far more important than the feeling of safety for our victims. And that has got to change. Because what tends to happen is she loses her mind in this process, and we may lose her. She would wind up on that list. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is this idea that we expect victims to heal. It's almost like you're out and people are like, oh, you're out, this is great. You're scared to death of winding up on the list. You're expected somehow in society to heal and thrive and rebuild your life while you're still being abused. I was shocked with what I was expected to do without any support for my safety. And so what we need to do is we really need to put a lot more safety. We need to, as I like to say, support and love the heck out of our victims. We can no longer live in a society where the rights of the abusers are more important than that feeling of safety. Because to live an actualized life, we need food, water, shelter. The fourth one is safety. And we expect our victims to try to survive and rebuild without it. So like I said in the beginning, I set a goal. My goal was to impart some wisdom to you about what domestic violence looks like, encourage you to start to talk about it, and then support and love the heck out of survivors. Whenever I speak, I also take an opportunity to say thanks to those in the room who are kind enough to give me a mic and who actually put me here. My first thanks, as you can imagine, is to the good people at A Woman's Place. I can't look at Chelsea and me cry. You guys took a dilapidated woman whose life was on life support at the time when I left, and you allowed me to survive with dignity. That's what it's all about. Surviving domestic violence is filled with embarrassment. It is filled with shame. And you guys know that the road is going to be jagged, and you give us the tools, the pat on the back to say, it's okay whatever you're going through. So thank you. I would like to thank Detective Kevin Larkin, who is here with us in the room tonight. He is a detective in the Plumsteadville Police Department, and one of the only members of He was one of the only members of law enforcement to make sure that I at least felt safe. And time and time again, he went above and beyond the call of duty to do anything that he could. Jen, do you feel safe? Like, he would just check in with me, periodically. I felt like I had someone in my corner. Kevin, thank you. Someone to support and love her. And I would like to thank, and I can't look at them either, Mary Fran Von Tempo, Susan Olson, and her husband, Rich Romick. These are the three individuals who supported me and loved the heck out of me during this time. I was Susan and Rich's third wheel for like a year and a half. Rich is a really good guy. They're the ones that I would call when I was scared. They were the ones that I would call when he was standing behind me on the elliptical and I didn't know what to do at the gym. Mary Fran probably still twitches, but when I call, when she sees my number on her phone, she picks up and goes, I'm in church. But are you okay? Like, do you need anything? Because that's what we did for so long through that process. And now I am going to cry. To my daughter, Stephanie, the strength that you and Vicki showed that day, it's more than most adults share and show in a lifetime. I still don't know, and I'm so proud that I raised someone that would have your kind of strength. You not only saved our family, you saved my life, and I am forever grateful. I hope in some way I have inspired you. I hope you have a victim in mind and you're like, you know, what she does say makes me a little, concerned. There's a victim out there who is dying for us to come and save her. And my greatest hope of all is that next year we actually have no reason to gather because there's no names to read on the list. Thank you very much.